Travis Thomas and George Balekji from the PNC Bank studio. As you guys know, over this holiday break, we've been giving you best of episodes. This one is exciting.
Yes.
Simone Biles, the GOAT Simone Biles. Matt Miller of ESPN is one of the best scouts of NFL talent.
Yep.
And Kurt Warner, man, your guy. He loved Drake May.
He loved Drake May, and he nerded out with Drake May. It reminded me of you, who loves looking at all the analytics and the numbers and all the things I don't care about. Kurt Warner totally nerds out about Drake May. You're going to want to see this.
I hate I couldn't make the Kurt Warner interview.
I know, me
Everyone
too.
was giving me crap here, too. They're like, yeah, Kurt only did it because you weren't around, because they knew like that'd be my type of combo. But it was great. I mean, listening to him, the way he talks about receivers, the way he talks about quarterbacks, it was great. So here it is, Kurt Warner, Matt Miller, and Simone Biles on Boston has entered the chat. She's Simone Biles, doesn't really need an intro, but the GOAT of U.S. gymnastics, most decorated U.S. gymnast in Team USA Olympic history. Simone, thanks for taking the time. It's an honor. How are you doing today?
Of course. Thank you guys so much. I'm so happy and blessed to be able to speak with you, and I'm doing good. We're at our 7th tour stop currently right now. We have lots more to come, so yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, I can't wait to get into the Gold Over America tour talk. We'll get into that, but I want to start with, have you reflected on, and has it hit you, what you accomplished in Paris to come back for a 3rd Olympic Games, get gold multiple times again, and then once again just leave your imprint on the sport and the Olympics overall?
Yes, most definitely. So after the Olympics, I actually got to go home to Chicago with my husband, and I spent a week there to just rest, relax, and recharge. And I was thinking about the accomplishments in Paris, and I'm so grateful and blessed to be able to have an amazing body that's healthy enough to compete and still just represent the United States. And it's bittersweet because I never thought I'd be back competing at an Olympic Games, but everything that I've gone through and the story that I get to share with the audience and with the fans, not just on an Olympic stage, but on our touring stage as well, is truly a blessing. So I'm excited that we have the Gold Over America tour to just share our stories, have representation, and so that the kids can really resonate with us, not just as that huge athletes they see on the TV, but really up close and personal. And I think that's what's so special about our show, is we really get to be super close with them, cheer with them, have fun, say hi, wave, and interact. And so that every fan feels seen and heard.
Yeah, what is that experience like when you're at the Olympics? I know hyper-focused on the task at hand and all the competition, but the Gold Over America tour, taking you to all these cities all across the country, and it's big that it puts gymnastics on a stage like we've never seen before. It's gymnastics meets a concert, but as you pointed out, the fan interaction is so important as well.
Yes, 100%, because they've supported us on our careers for so long. So it's such a blessing that we're able to put on a show like this to give back, even if it's just a little bit of inspiration and waving to them. And just so that, again, they feel seen and heard. But it really is so exciting because whenever we're at the Olympics, we're really, really stressed. We have a job to do. But here, it's all fun. That's all we're here to do, is to have fun, inspire the next generation, tell our stories, and hopefully leave everyone with a piece of gold.
When you look back from starting out being on the world stage at 19 back in Rio to Tokyo and then to Paris, how did each game challenge you in a different way?
Oh my goodness. Honestly, I would say Rio, I was so naive about what was going on and what was happening. And I think we were so mentally programmed that we knew what would happen if we won gold. So we kind of just went out there, did our job, a little bit robotic. And then Tokyo, obviously, the circumstances were a little different because of COVID. So we tried to push the best we could without that fan interaction that we have, that sometimes we feed off the crowd to have better performances, as well as not having family and friends in the crowd to support us. So I would say that was a little bit mentally exhausting more because everyone was going through things and we still had to go out there and put on a show on an Olympic stage. And then Paris again was kind of like, let's bring fun back into the sport. Let's support one another. Tokyo wasn't the best, but we're all going to go out here, redeem ourselves, and show everybody what we're capable of and what we're made of. And I think we did just that. So that was so much success and followed by so much celebration. And that's also why we do the Gold Over America tour too, is to celebrate our success that we had in Paris.
And how gratifying was it to return to Paris, get 3 gold medals, be back on that stage at full competition after everything you went through in Tokyo, not just in the competition, but also something you've been so brave and open about, but going through your battles with your mental health as a competitor?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it was truly a blessing in disguise because if what didn't happen in Tokyo, I truly don't believe I'd be in a mentally stable position. And I also believe I wouldn't be able to get on my social media platforms and share my story with people and resonate with them and encourage them to get the help that they deserve. And so I'm really blessed and grateful that that played out that way, and grateful that I got to share my story and be raw, vulnerable, and open and honest, because I've always wanted to do that with my fan base and for them to see me as human rather than just Simone Biles. And I think they saw just that. And yeah, it was really nice.
Yeah, I think, something to be grateful of is that you're an open book about it, because we forget in Rio, you were just 19 and you didn't just compete, but you dominated. The pressure that can come with that, the stardom that comes with it as well, is a lot for someone at your age to handle. And to still return and compete in Tokyo, and then again in Paris to be at such a high level. You pointed out, it's true. We see these Olympians, we see these high-level athletes, and we forget that if you're not wearing a brace or have your wrist wrapped, that mental health is something very serious. It's something that never goes away, so you still overcome it every day. What has it been like once you took that leap? Once you opened up about it, the aftermath, I would say, of hearing the feedback from fans, maybe people that don't follow gymnastics but are going through their mental health struggles as well.
Yeah, the outpouring love and support that I received was truly mind-boggling, because I didn't realize how many people were silently suffering, like myself. So to be able to share my story was, I feel like, very eye-opening. But I also feel like I would go to the mall or to the grocery store, or I would be, say, at a dealership, wherever I am. People would come up to me and thank me for what I've done, because they realize, like, you know what, I need to go get the help that I deserve. And I started therapy because of you. So thank you so much for sharing your story. It has changed my life. And although therapy is very tough, I'm so grateful that I have these resources to use and knowledge to gain from that, so I can better help myself. So I think it's just such a blessing. But also, everybody's mental health journey is different and unique in their own ways. And I think I got so caught up in it because in gymnastics, if you do have an injury, the doctor tells you 6 to 8 weeks and you'll be fine. Or if you get surgery, 3 to 4 months. But with mental health, that wasn't the case. So I'm thinking, it's been 6 weeks. Why am I not healed yet? Da 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 da. Like, I've been taking medicine. I've tried so many things, but I honestly believe I'll be on this mental health journey for the rest of my life. And I'm so grateful again that I have these resources to be able to use and apply now.
Yeah, it's certainly something. It never goes away. And for, people that seek help, therapy is an important, step, having that support staff around them. So always, like, thank you to you as someone that's broken down that stigma, that, speaks out and puts it on a platform that is so crucial and so valuable for people that go through it every day. I've spoken about it like multiple times. I brought up Rio, Tokyo, Paris. You're now 27 and everyone's going, well, what's Simone Biles up to next? Is it weird that you're just 27 and people keep asking you about retirement?
Well, no, because in gymnastics, the longevity has never, ever been there. And I think these past 5 to 6 years, we're truly pushing that past our boundaries with the proper training and recovery. So I do think that it's not unnatural for people to be asking about retirement, because this isn't normal what we're doing. But it is funny because now we're like, no, I could go for 8 more years, whatever that may be. So it's truly a blessing. But yeah, it is funny because as soon as you finish the Olympics, they're like, what's next? And I'm like, damn, I can't even relish in this moment and be so grateful for the opportunity to compete on a world stage again at an Olympic Games and just to celebrate my success. You guys just want to know what's next, which I truly don't believe is fair, because we've been working our whole lives for this moment and you guys don't even give us 10 minutes after. So I think that's actually kind of hilarious, because we're celebrating this as much as possible. And then everybody's like, what's next? But I also know that's so normal in life. As As soon as you get a boyfriend, when are you getting married? As soon as you get married, when are you having babies? All of that stuff. So everyone just wants to know what's next to be the first to report it. So right now it's working on my mental and physical health before I make any commitments. Because again, for gymnastics, it's not like we have an off season. As soon as we start training, we're in for the long haul for those 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, we know what's next right now is this Gold Over America Tour.
Yes.
I'm not going to ask what's next, but I know LA in 2028, home turf is very enticing. But last one I'll end with, Simone. I mean, how much joy does this bring to you? The Gold Over America Tour, which will be in Boston October 6th. And they added a date in Boston for you guys. So many tickets are going October 6th and 7th at TD Garden. How much joy does this bring to you?
I mean, for us, it's sharing the love and the passion we have for the sport with our audience. So obviously, we love the sport a huge amount, and we're just happy that we get to share that with the rest of the world.
Simone, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. The GO of gymnastics will be here in Boston October 6th and 7th, the Gold Over America Tour. Simone, thanks for taking the time. Appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you so much.
All this talk about Shedeur, I got to ask about Travis Hunter, who you alluded to is like his only guy to really throw to on offense. Of course, there's also Jimmy Horn Jr. But when you are looking at Travis Hunter, watching the tape, a guy that is such a sick athlete on both sides of the ball, do you think he's better off being a corner or a wide receiver at the next level?
I swear I didn't ask you to ask me this question, but my colleague Jordan Reed and I have this huge article coming out soon that basically is each of us arguing our side of this. And I'll give you a little teaser. I think he's a wide receiver. And a big part of that to me is he's 6'2", 185 pounds. He's a very lean, long body type. I don't want him throwing his shoulder into 220-pound receivers 10 times a game. I don't want him tackling. And he's a good tackler. He's a very active defender. That's not where I want his athleticism being used. I think he's better off with that body type, avoiding contact instead of inviting it and having to initiate it. He's a great player. You can make the case right now he's the Heisman front runner. He should very likely be a top 5 pick when it comes to the 2025 NFL draft. And it's going to be fun kind of debating that over the next 9 months. Is this guy, a wide receiver? Is he a corner? I think the argument for corner is he could be a full-time corner and play 10 to 15 snaps at receiver a game. It's unlikely that we would see him do the opposite. There's not really a package to get a fourth corner out there, 10, 15 snaps a game, but he's fascinating. The work ethic, the conditioning. Got a guy who played 137 snaps last week. That's ridiculous. Like the NFL players are playing like 60 to 70 snaps a week. He's playing double that on a weekly basis. So, just the conditioning ability, and to do that at Baylor. But, they're in the heat of northern Texas this time of year. It's still in the 90s, and he's out there playing almost 140 snaps. So, just an amazing ability that he has to stay out there.
No, I love you point that out. And that's just the chemistry, going back to our Joplin, Missouri days. That's why I knew. I didn't know that article was coming out, but I knew you'd have a great answer for that. And I'm excited to see Travis Hunter if he just devotes himself to either position because he's so good at both. It is a question of like which one does he play because it's hard to decide because he's such a high-level guy. Out of all the names I've dropped, when you're going through tape, you're putting together your mocks, who is that guy in this draft?
Oh my gosh. Travis Hunter is certainly up there. I think I surprised a lot of people because I think Will Johnson, the corner from Michigan, he's my favorite player in the class. He's my number 1 ranked player right now. He's amazing. He looks like Pat Surtain 2.0. This year he already has 2 interceptions. He's run both back for touchdowns. He's 6'2", 210 pounds. He's going to run a 4.4. He's physical. He has ball skills. He's the total package. He really is. So he's certainly in that mix. Luther Burden from Missouri, also a stud. This draft is really, really heavy, and Patriots fans are going to love this. It's really heavy at wide receiver. It's really heavy at corner. It's really heavy at defensive end. It's not a great – we talked about the quarterbacks. There's not that one quarterback that you're like, yep, let me trade 3 first-round picks for this player. There's not right now a great depth, and I know we'll talk about offensive tackle. There's not great depth at offensive tackle, but this is a draft. Running back, wide receiver on offense, pass rusher, corner on defense are the spots for sure.
Yeah, you just alluded to it. I love that you're saying it's deep in receiver, and you named one of those guys as Luther Burden out of Missouri, of course, a wide receiver. We got to talk tackles because that's what it's all about right now here in New England, watching the Patriots. And I remember you put out an article before the season kicked off, or opening weeks of the NFL, where you had the Patriots taking Kelvin Banks with the top 5 pick. It's either Will Campbell out of LSU or it's Kelvin Banks out of Texas. What sets them apart that you see Kelvin Banks being the better fit in New England?
I'll tell you, I'm not the biggest Will Campbell fan. A lot like Carson Beck, coming into this year, I had seen the potential, and I thought we were going to see, a stock up. I haven't seen that from him. I think his plays regress. So this could be a very long answer. Kelvin Banks just plays with more smooth ability. I think the agility to work left or right in the run game is very impressive. He gets downfield well, and he attacks linebackers with accuracy. But to just have the flexibility and the agility to get to that second level as consistently as he does is fantastic. And in the pass game, he's only 6'4", and that's going to be a big question. So when I watch a tackle and you're under 6'5", or it looks like you might have short arms, I immediately go to your feet. Are you a good enough athlete to cover up that lack of length with your feet? Now, he absolutely has that. Will Campbell on the other side has sub 33-inch arms, and despite the fact that he's 6'5", under 34 is where you start to kind of worry, and he's under 33, and I don't see the footwork to cover that up. He plays in an almost upright stance. He almost looks like an old school, high school tailback lined up at left tackle with his hands on his knees. It's a really odd stance, and he loses a lot of leverage because of it, especially in the run game. It is impossible for him to get under the pads of defenders in that stance. So he's going to need reworked a little bit. Then you worry about the length. So I think Banks is far and away the superior tackle. And I would throw out names like Josh Simmons at Ohio State is probably getting closer to that Will Campbell level, but Banks is in a tier all by himself.
No, I love you point that out. And even like you said, it was a long answer, but I think all that is so important to know, especially I'll say back to you, a general manager like Elliot Wolf, he points out why he liked Vidarian Lowe at left tackle is because of his long arms. Arm length matters to him. He has his type of guy for receiver. If the arm length does matter, then it puts Kelvin Banks above Will Campbell. I think that is something that will have an effect in the draft. And we look at their situation. They need a guy to start day one. They went with a quarterback to develop, to sit. They need that tackle to be ready because this offense can't roll out an offensive line even close to what they have this year. And they need to be ready to play Drake May under a cost control contract. You talk to a lot of execs across the league. You obviously been watching college. You watch the pros forever. And I know you keep tabs around the league. What do you make of the Patriots situation? As everyone's saying, play Drake May, I'm with you. I say sit him because this offensive line is not going to get any better. I don't know how long they can play it, but what I'm asking here, Matt, is basically what do you make of the situation with Drake May and how the Patriots should play it with a bad offensive line and now a really banged up offensive line, likely losing David Andrews for the season?
Yeah, George, I said it when they drafted him. Do not play him his rookie year. These other quarterbacks who were drafted, it's like, sure, throw Bo Nix out there. I didn't think Drake should play. Not just because the Patriots offense, but he had the least starting experience of any quarterback drafted in the first round this year. Now, Bo Nix and Michael Penix have been in college, for 6 years. So that certainly changes things. But that lack of experience, I thought the best thing for him would be to sit and learn while not getting his tail kicked behind a bad offensive line. Now, if it was a situation where you had a good offensive line and you had some receivers, kind of like Washington, where you have a scheme that's going to move the quarterback, you've got some good running backs, you've got some good receivers, okay, throw them out there. I didn't think New England had that. And through 5 weeks, I think tape backs that up. So I applaud Elliot Wolf and Gerard Mayo for staying the course and saying, we drafted Drake May for the future. And the best thing for this team long-term is not to win 3 more games in 2024. It's to set Drake up for 2025. So maybe he plays a couple games at the end of the season, but I would be very afraid, even at 6'4", 230 pounds, I would be afraid to put him back there and watch him take some of the hits that Jacoby Brissett has taken. So look at offensive tackle in round 1, and then I think you have to add playmakers in rounds 2 through 7. Obviously, free agency a big part of this, as you mentioned, with that cost-controlled rookie contracted quarterback. But they need weapons, and I think every mock draft you see from me here on out, it will be left tackle round 1, and then weapons in subsequent rounds.
Just take weapons the last 6 rounds. Just go weapon every round. But I agree. It's
Why not, right?
It's a Kelvin Banks top 3, and then I'm looking at like a Trey Harris out of Ole Miss, a Yomanora out of Stanford, see where it goes. And as they did with this with Polk and Javon Baker, take multiple weapons, keep throwing darts at the board, and eventually they're going to stick. We'll see what they do. And I love you point out the starts for Drake May. He was only a starter for 2 seasons at UNC. Someone like Jaden Daniels had over 50 games under his belt coming out of Arizona State and, of course, LSU, and was in a great structure, and he has a good play caller like Cliff Kingsbury.
The great Kurt Warner with us, NFL Network analyst Kurt Warner. You can see Kurt every Sunday on NFL Network, NFL Game Day morning at 9 a.m. I always spend my Sunday mornings with you, my man. We appreciate you joining us here.
We appreciate you watching with us on Sunday mornings.
All right, look, now we're going to show this tweet. You've been high on Drake May, and we love that around here. So what I want to do with you, we were talking off camera a little bit about the X's and O's of the game. Tell us, what do you see when you break this kid down? Because we know you love him, and you know we love him around here, Kurt.
I mean, the first thing people have to understand when I break down tape, the most important thing for me, especially with rookie quarterbacks, is are they getting their eyes in the right spot? Because that to me is where the position always starts, is you got to know where you start in the process, you know, and obviously there's lots of reasons for where you start, you know, the concept that you're reading, obviously the coaching that you're getting, what the defense is giving you, all of those things. But that's the first thing that I look at. And so the more a young quarterback can have his eyes in the right spot, so he's in the right starting place, obviously the more he's going to have success. But the more I look at it and go, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. And that to me is the biggest thing. You might miss some, I mean, you're going to miss some throws. Like every quarterback misses throws in the course of the game. You know, I've got a son that plays college football, and he'll miss 2 or 3 throws in a game. And, you know, he'd call, Dad, I played terrible. And I'm like, you should sit down and watch NFL tape with me. Like every NFL quarterback misses 5, 6, 7 throws easy in a game. You know, like it's hard to do. And so, you know, when a lot of people will look at stats and they'll look at touchdown passes and you know, they'll look at incompletions and all that stuff, I don't. You know, although that obviously plays a part, but I look at, are they going through the process the right way? Are they throwing it to the right guy? Are they seeing what they're supposed to be seeing? And then, of course, the next step is when they do that, are they getting the ball in the right manner to the right guy on a consistent basis? And so in this past game with Drake May, I just feel like he's really got a great understanding of what he's trying to do from the time the ball is snapped. And his technique is actually better than coming out of college. And even in preseason, there were a number of the technical issues that would cost him at times. I think he's cleaned a lot of that stuff up. He looks different from the technique standpoint on top of it. So when you put all that together and then you add in, you know, there's times that I kind of scratch my head on what exactly the Patriots are trying to do on a concept and the spacing that's there that doesn't necessarily allow Drake or any quarterback to, you know, to fully have success, you know, with what the concept. So you put all that together, and that's what I'm seeing from Drake May, is that he's making good decisions and he's consistently getting his eyes in the right spot. And when things aren't clean, you know, he's still doing something good with the football. And so you put all that together, and you know, I've been really surprised. You know, and I'm one that, you know, I'm never afraid to say, hey, I didn't necessarily see this coming out of college. Yeah. Because in college, you get what you get. Like, you don't know who a player is or if they can be better at the NFL level or any of that stuff when they're in college. So you have to go off of what you saw. And, you know, his senior year at North Carolina, or I mean his last year at North Carolina, you know, it was like the technique wasn't there. His feet were all over the place. He looked uncomfortable in the pocket. He missed a lot of easy throws. And so you go off of that coming into what I've seen this year. And I've been really, really impressed with, you know, the complete package that I've seen from Drake May, you know, here early in his career.
Kurt, when you say lack of spacing in the play design, take us into what can Alex Van Pelt do better to maybe set Drake May up for even more success so far in this rookie campaign? What do you see play calling wise that the Patriots can be better at for this kid?
Yeah, I mean, when I talk about spacing, the whole goal in playing offensive football, specifically when you're playing against a zone defense, right? Man to man is a different beast, but when you're playing against zone defense, is you're trying to stretch defenders, right? You're trying to figure out how much space a defender can cover. And then our goal is to put pressure on him or put him in conflict, I always like to say. So, for instance, if there's a guy that's, that has to cover the flat area of the field, and there's only one guy, so like a cover two defense, and the corner has to come down and cover the flat. The goal is to put somebody over the top of him and somebody underneath him and make him make a decision. Are you going to go deep or are you going to go short? Mm-hmm. But the key for a play designer and a key for a quarterback is there has to be enough space between those two receivers so that if the defender stays low, I actually have enough room to throw it over the top of him. And so that's kind of a simple analogy of sometimes when I watch what New England does, I say to myself, well, that one defender can cover both of those guys.
Right.
And so Drake's trying to read over there, and he really doesn't have a shot unless the underneath guy's open, right? Unless the defender just falls off and he can throw it to the underneath guy. He doesn't really have a shot at the over-the-top guy because there's not enough spacing between the two. I did a little piece on my YouTube page, QB Confidential on YouTube, a couple weeks ago on just a few of the concepts, 5 or 6 of the concepts from one of the games of New England. And it was kind of based on that same thing. And some, I believe, is more play design because I've seen it happen a few times. Yeah. And then other times I wonder if it's more, player related where they just don't stay true to the details of a play. Right. And then they get too tight together. And then Drake doesn't have the spacing to be able to create, a throw. And so that's basically, what we're always talking about is creating spacing, right? Is trying to create. I always talk about it. If I can force a defender to cover both width and depth. So instead of just letting them, cover width, one way or just cover depth, I'm trying to get them to cover both. So they have to move sideways and they have to get depth, right? Or we can beat them. And so a lot of that spacing and play design and detail of plays is all with that mindset of how do I conflict this guy, whoever that is on a particular defense, conflict him as much as possible and as quickly as possible, right? Mm-hmm. That's what helps the quarterback. The sooner I can read movement of a defender or lack of movement, right? If I'm throwing a flat and the flat defender doesn't move, okay, that gives me an indication. If I'm trying to throw a flat and something over the top and I get the flat defender to move really fast, that gives me a quick indication of where I go with the football and a quick read. And so to me, a play designer should always be trying to do that. I'm always trying to influence guys to get my primary guy open and to give my quarterback a read as quickly as I possibly can so he can either work through his progressions or he can get the ball out of his hands really, really fast.
Yeah, definitely. Listen, I've been really impressed with his accuracy, too. So if the play calling, to your point, I mean, if we could scheme guys open even, this kid can put it on the money where it needs to be. I want to talk intangibles with Drake May because I always felt like, Kurt, you led the league in intangibles. So as I sort of look at this kid, even hearing you talk about how he cleaned up footwork, how his processing seems much faster than what you saw in college to now. He clearly has a work ethic. I mean, intangible-wise, leadership, work ethic. Are you seeing these things in Drake May as well?
Well, no doubt. But again, I'm seeing it from afar. I know him a little bit, but I do know some people that know him very well. And everybody that I've talked to that knows him very well has said and told me during the process, hey, this guy wants to be great. This guy has the work ethic. This guy has the mindset to be everything you want in a franchise quarterback. And so, you hear that already. And just watching him in interviews and hearing him talk, it sure feels like that on top of what everybody said. But then, when you see it, play out the way that it has, and you see that, like you said, he must have put in some work. Mm-hmm. He seems to be a student of the game, seems to really know what he's doing at a young stage. Those are great signs, with the fact that he does have physical gifts. He does have physical skills. and I'm always going to argue the other things are more important. But if you can have all those other things and the physical traits on top of it, that's what every team is looking for. That's what every team wants to have. And it sure seems like, he's got, a lot of things in that bucket, and especially early in his career.
What's the best way to build around it? Because, look, I mean, right now, you look at this roster, Kurt. The Patriots, it's a Christmas wish list in terms of what they need. You need offensive linemen. You need wide receivers. Hell, you need playmakers. How do you sort of build around this guy? I mean, is it all the above? What's the most important in terms of building around him, building blocks-wise? Where would you start?
I think as a quarterback, we always want to start with skill players. And, so for when I was with the Greatest Show on Turf, or even when I was in Arizona, I had some great playmakers around me. And so, I always like to think that direction. But I think a lot of it can really depend on who your quarterback is and what he does well. So, let me look at Cincinnati. We can look at Cincinnati, and I know, one of the first things that jumps out is you say, gosh, can we just give up Joe Burrow an offensive line? And I agree with that. But I think Joe Burrow is a guy that processes information extremely fast, maybe as fast as anybody in the league, gets the ball out of his hands. So in a situation like that, which again is, I reference back to myself, that's what I did really well. And so for me, I could work with an offensive line that wasn't great, because if I had playmakers, I'd get the ball out and we would have success based on dealing the football. So, if you have a quarterback like that, I don't mind going and getting a Jamar Chase, going and getting one of these top-notch, wide receivers, because your quarterback understands how to use them, and you understand how to use them, and you can cover some of the things on the offensive line. But if you don't have one of those guys, and even if in general we're talking about it, I think, I go and look at the Detroit Lions, and I say to myself, they took the approach that, they got all kinds of playmakers now, but they took the approach that we are going to build the best offensive line in football. Mm-hmm. And we are going to make the life of our quarterback easier in one way or another. And for them, it starts with running the football, taking the pressure off Jared Goff. So Jared Goff has played great, but he's throwing the ball 25 times a game, 18 times a game, low 30s every game, and he's able to have great success because they have great balance. Mm-hmm. And, the more I watch teams, the more you watch teams that get to the playoffs and have, runs in the playoffs, it's the teams that have great offensive lines. And that, to me, is where I would probably start. Okay. Believing I can scheme up my playmakers to get open against man coverage. I can have good schemes against zone coverage, where I feel like just about everybody that's in the NFL, if you can do the right thing and catch the ball, we can have success against zone coverage based on scheme. And so I really think, if you could build it a certain way, that I would build offensive line first, and then fill in the gaps and try to maybe steal some of these, really good playmakers a little bit later in the draft where I can, just because I've seen that work. Philadelphia, Jalen Hurts, there's certain limitations that he has as a quarterback. Right. But when you give him an offensive line in a run game, he's shown himself to be a really good NFL quarterback. And so when they put it on his shoulders and they didn't have a great offensive line, they weren't running the football, he looked very average. But then you put those pieces around him. And so the more I see teams that can do that and can dominate up front and can win the line of scrimmage, the easier it makes it for the quarterback. And so I really think if I was in a GM role, I would try to build there first and get some really good pieces up in front of him, and then try to find those playmakers outside of that.
Hey, brother, it's not just New England. I mean, Washington's got to figure out with Jaden Daniels. The Bears have to figure it out with Caleb. Obviously, we know Peyton's doing a great job out in Denver with Bo Nix. When you look at the rest of the rookie class, do you like these guys? I mean, what do you make of Caleb? What do you make of Jaden? What do you think of Bo Nix? Do you like these guys as much as you do Drake May? Is sort of, if I guess you had to rank them in a way, are they still on that? You're high on Drake May. Are you high on these other guys?
I am. I think Jaden obviously has been the best rookie quarterback of the year. And, he's just been great. He's seen it. He's had a plan. He understands what he's doing. He's very poised and calm in the pocket. His technique is really good. I mean, he's just been phenomenal for a rookie. And so it's been fun to watch him. Bo Nix, I think, has gotten better and better every week. I think, as you said, Coach Payton has done a great job of really making the game easier for him. Like last week, he threw 4 touchdown passes, but 2 of them were wide receiver screens, and the other one was just a great play design where he threw a shallow route, and there was nobody within 10 yards of the shallow runner. And so Coach Payton has really done a great job of utilizing the skills of Bo Nix, but also, what they have offensively. Another luxury for a young quarterback is a great defense. They have a great defense in Denver. But, I think he's on the upswing, and he's shown that he can do a lot of things that you need your franchise quarterback to do to be successful. So I really like him as well. I've seen glimpses from Caleb. I don't think Caleb sees it as well as Jaden and Drake have been seeing it. And so, and he hasn't had the luxury of some of those easy plays like Bo Nix has. And so, my verdict's still out on Caleb on where he is and who he's going to be. I called his game over in London, and he was great in that game. Threw 4 touchdowns in that game, had great command of the ball. So those are all things that you really like, but he's got to really start seeing the game better and seeing it quicker, if he's going to kind of step into the same realm as those other guys. But you see definitely the ability when things are right for him, you see, that he could be really, really good.
Yeah.
It's just, you just don't know quite yet because we haven't seen it kind of come together.
I really like this draft class. I think the future's bright for all these guys. I agree with everything you're saying there, but I tell you what, your ex-team, the Giants, my goodness gracious, Daniel Jones. I mean, it feels like that's the end of his era there in New York. What went wrong from the outside looking in with him? And do you think his career is salvageable? Or is he, is he a backup quarterback in the league? As I look at him, Kurt, I feel like he's a decent backup. I don't know if he's going to get an opportunity to be a starter.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, I think we kind of know what Daniel Jones is. And I actually felt like he's played, outside of the first game and his last game, I feel like he's played pretty decent quarterback this year. I just think the bottom line is he doesn't make all the plays he's supposed to make.
Mm-hmm.
He's not really a guy that elevates you and makes plays that he's not supposed to make. And so he's just kind of shown himself to be that kind of mid-level quarterback. And, I'm a believer that, and I always use Andy Dalton as an example. I'm a huge fan of Andy Dalton. I think he's one of the 32 best quarterbacks in the in the world,
mm-hmm.
and should be a starter in the National Football League. But the thing about Andy is that, he doesn't give you anything really extra physically. And so he's going to be a starting quarterback. Let's just say I always kind of rank it like 0 to 100. Okay, so we have a ranking and it's 0 to 100. And to be a starting quarterback in the NFL, you have to reach 75.
Mm-hmm.
Andy Dalton reaches that threshold of 75.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not because of really anything physically. It's because of the things that he does. He makes the right decisions. He's accurate with the football. He can anticipate. He can do all this, all I guess the things that are away from the athletic part of playing the position.
Right.
But he does it really well. And so that's our threshold. So he's probably never going to carry me to a Super Bowl. But if we put a team around him, he's a good enough starter that we can win with him, and he showed that in Cincinnati. Mm-hmm. And I think Cincinnati finally realized, okay, he did exactly what we needed him to do, won the division, went to the playoffs every year, but we couldn't win in the playoffs because Andy couldn't quite elevate us above that. So we went and got Joe Burrow, and Joe Burrow gives us all of what Andy does and then extra.
Right.
And so the bottom line for me is if you want to start in the National Football League, you got to be Andy Dalton. And so when I look at Daniel Jones, he reminds me a lot of what an Andy Dalton is. He's just not, he just doesn't change the complexion of the game mm-hmm. with anything that he does physically. Right. So now you've got to do all those mental things. Now, he can run and do some things extending, but you got to do all those mental things. Or when there's a layup there to be had, you got to make the layups.
That's right.
And that's what Daniel Jones hasn't done enough. And so to me, he doesn't meet that 75 ranked threshold because he's just not consistent enough on those other things that he has to be able to do because, he can't elevate us in other ways. Can't elevate us with his arm, or he can't elevate us by running around like Lamar Jackson or Kyler Murray and creating plays. And so that to me is where he's missing. And, and I agree with you. Not that he can't be a starter in the National Football League. I just don't know if he can ever be that high-end starter that transcends and transforms a team. I think if he's a starter, and you got to have a good team around him, and you guys will have a chance to win some games, but I don't know how far you can really go. Or he's a really good backup in this league for a long time and can come in and give you 2 or 3 really good games, or he can come in and win some games for you, but maybe not 17 of them just because of the lack of consistency that's there.
Yeah, I'm going with that one. I think he's a backup quarterback in this league that can be a spot starter for you. I'll tell you what, though, Kirk, hearing you talk about that, being a backup may be good for him because now you're diving more into the minutia of the game. Maybe he has to pour in to those fundamentals that you're talking about that he kind of lacks. I tell you what, your former team, the Cardinals, have no such QB conundrum there. This kid, Kyler Murray, is balling. Now, here's my take on him, and I want you to tell me if I'm out of bounds or if I'm being fair. I look at him, I see the stats, I see the eye-popping plays, but I never felt like he wins enough. This season, Cardinals are shocking some people. He's playing well. Does he need sort of a validation season here, Kurt, in your mind? Like, do they need to get in the playoffs? Do they need a deep run? Or is this guy kind of empty calories? He puts up numbers, but he's not really a leader. What do you see with him?
I think the biggest thing with Kyler is, he's kind of more of the opposite of like an Andy Dalton. And so he transcends in so many ways physically. Unbelievably gifted thrower. Like a lot of people see the athleticism.
Right.
But he is a gifted thrower of the football. Throws it extremely well. And then he's got, obviously, the athletic ability to run around and make the crazy plays. Mm-hmm. Now, what I believe he has to do is he's got to come back and start making more of the layups. Seeing things better from inside the pocket, making the easy throws, seeing the throws that are in front of him, to elevate his game above that kind of 75, right? Because that 75, you can get there a lot of different ways.
Right.
You can be 74 athletic and one pocket passer, let's just say, and get to 75. Or you can be 75 pocket passer like Andy Dalton and 0 athletic, or vice versa, and you can still get there. And so I think Kyler leans more towards that threshold because of the athletic ability.
Yes.
And now the other part needs to kind of come along. The beautiful thing this year with the Cardinals is they're not winning all based on Kyler Murray. Mm-hmm. I think there has been some times where it's been about Kyler having to elevate himself above 75 and not having the pieces around him. And, they struggle to do that, or they would win just enough. Like you said, they would win, just enough, but not a lot. And I think it fell into that. So, I really think it comes down to 2 things. I mean, the team around him is playing really well. This team isn't really going through Kyler Murray. It's going through James Conner and the physicality part of it. And Kyler gets to be a complementary piece with all the gifts and talents he's got. Perfect. Now they have a chance to really be successful and do the things that they're doing this year. Mm-hmm. Or I should say either or and. Mm-hmm. Kyler, if he's able to elevate his game in those other areas, and I really think that the biggest question with Kyler is when we have to count on you in games to throw 45 times and to make the right decisions and make the layups and consistently play the position without being able to run around and be athletic, because that's great, but we need to be able to win in situations where you're not able to do that, when a team takes that away. And I think that's the question, ultimately, that he's going to have to answer as a franchise quarterback at some point is, do we see this guy as a guy that no matter what the situation, no matter what's around him, that he can give us a chance based on being a complete quarterback? Because, I think we've just seen enough in this league. No matter how great you are as an athlete, it is tough to live in that world week in and week out. Like, it is tough to expect your quarterback, or even if you're that quarterback, to expect yourself to be able to make 10, 12, 15 of those special athletic plays a game. And that could be a special throw or a special run or a special buy time and create. It's hard to count on that every week. So you've got to be able to do the other stuff. And I think that's why we see the Josh Allens, Lamar Jacksons, the Patrick Mahomes always in the MVP conversation and always having their team in the playoff mix because they can do both things. And specifically with Lamar and Josh, they've gotten so much better at playing the game, at taking the layups, at making it easier upon themselves so they don't have to create these crazy plays 10 and 12 times a game for their team to have a chance. Right. Now they play the game and they give their team a chance. And then they elevate their team with the one or two special plays that they have to make. Now you've got these transcendent quarterbacks, which I believe Kyler has the ability to be.
Yes.
But he's got to grow in those other areas, in my opinion, to be able to step to that next phase and truly become that guy that we're talking about every year as having his team in the mix and being in the MVP mix because he's got both aspects of his game.
Man, Kurt, you are preaching the quarterback gospel. Listen, I'll tell you what, you have a great point about sort of taking the layups, particularly with Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, because the proof is in the pudding. In the postseason, it seems like those guys are pressing more. They're not taking the layups. They're trying to make the splashy plays. Their teams become too dependent on them to do that. And in the playoffs, they haven't had the success. Whereas Mahomes is exactly what you described. Mahomes in the postseason, the defense is taking away that, no problem. I'll dink and dunk you. He'll take what the defense gives him, and he has all the trophies. Look, I can't talk Cardinals with you. I know we're talking QBs, but I can't talk Cardinals with you and let you go without giving me a Larry Fitzgerald story. Kurt, I need it. We the people need it. Give us a Larry Fitzgerald story before we get out of here. We all love him.
I mean, and everybody should love him because he's unbelievable. There's so many great stories about Larry. I think the great thing to me about Larry, as a player, and I mean, obviously it speaks to the character and the person as well, is how he always stepped up to the challenge that was placed in front of him. That, he was a really good receiver when I got there. And I challenged him very early to do some things different, to push the envelope in some certain ways, because I really felt like if he honed in on his route running skills to go along with his physical. So it's very similar to what we're talking about with quarterbacks, right?
Right.
He had all the physical skills. Now bring the details and for a wide receiver, the understanding of the why, to the athleticism. And so I challenged him very early in some of those things.
Right.
And it was fun to watch him step up to the challenge. I remember a time when Todd Haley challenged him to block on the outside and say, hey, you're going to have great contributions catching the football, and I know that's what you want to do, but hey, this is a team sport.
Right.
Get out there on the edge and block for your guys and help them get big plays. Like, be a complete player. And then I remember, us showing video of Larry out on the edge blocking and dominating people because he was challenged in that manner. And then I think about it later in his career. When I was with Larry, I begged Larry to go into the slot. I'm like, Larry, just be willing to go inside and we can do so many things and create so many things for you, and it's harder to double team you and all this stuff. And early in his career, Larry's like, you know what? It's really fast in there. There's a lot of bodies in there. Just keep me out on the edge and let me be comfortable. And then Bruce Arians got there, and Bruce Arians said, hey, if you're going to prolong your career, you have to go inside.
Wow.
And, and he didn't really want to do it, but he accepted that challenge from Bruce, and went inside and had some of his most productive years inside as a slot receiver when some of that athleticism had left him and he wasn't the same player, yet he still would have more catches and more yards than he did early in his career. And so I think those are kind of the stories when I think about the player of Larry Fitzgerald that really speak to his greatness, is the ability to evolve and the ability to grow and the ability to always be coachable and to challenge himself in different phases throughout the entirety of his career. And it's why, he just kept getting better. I mean, I think about Tom Brady out there when you're talking about the Patriots, and that was the thing that always impressed me about Tom, is that, we talk about ceilings all the time. And, somehow we think we know somebody's ceiling, which we never do.
Right.
But the most beautiful thing is when we realize that these guys, they keep chasing their ceiling. And as good as they are, they never settle and they go, can I be better? Can I be better? Can I be better? And that's who Larry Fitzgerald was. And that's who Tom Brady was, is every year he looked to get better. And, we thought by the time he was 33, it was like, you don't have to get any better. Just stay like this for another 10 years and you're going to be the best to ever do it. Yet he just continued to push and see. And, his ceiling was so high as a quarterback because he kept kind of challenging, you put the ceiling here, I'm going to bust through it and see if it works to be a little bit higher. And, I think the great players have that. And to me, that was what I appreciated so much about Larry was, sometimes it took a little pushing and prodding, but every time he accepted the challenge and pushed himself further. And it's why, I think he's one of the, top 3 wide receivers that we've ever seen in this game because of those.
I completely agree with that. Hey, you brought up Tom Brady in that story about Larry Fitzgerald. I want to ask you, because I always felt like the greatest show on turf opened the portal for what would be the Patriots dynasty. When you look back all these years later on that Super Bowl that you lost to the Patriots, is there a moment from that game or a story from that game that stands out to you?
I think there's lots of storylines, obviously, when you play in those games and you go back and think about a lot of things. But, if we're talking in reference to Tom Brady, everybody wants to say, like, oh, did you know when you played him and, when he won that first Super Bowl? And, of course, nobody knew. Anyone that followed this season, Tom was really a complimentary piece. It wasn't about throwing the football. I think in the Super Bowl, he did win the MVP, but he threw for like 140 yards or something like that in the game. So it wasn't about, did you see the Tom Brady that would be to come in those early moments? And I would say no, other than what I saw in that game was, with a minute to go in the game and us having the momentum and us, kind of coming back and tying the game and everything kind of turning over to our side. What I saw was that the Patriots put the ball in Tom Brady's hands, and they weren't afraid to do that. And Tom did what he always did. And if there was one glimpse of who Tom Brady was or who he would become in that game, it was that last drive. That they didn't play afraid. He didn't play afraid. He stepped up and made the huge plays that he needed to make to move his team down and set him up for the game-winning field goal. And that would become, to me, what made Tom Brady the greatest quarterback of all time. You can look at a lot of different things that he did well. But to me, he was the best quarterback in the big moments that we had ever seen. And so that, to me, is what always elevated him. And that was the one glimpse I got in that game of, now when I look back, there it was. What became his MO, what became who Tom Brady was and was known for, it was right there in front of me in that first game, even though it might have been clouded by the fact that we're not throwing it all over the place and we're not doing all these crazy things.
Sure.
It was still there in the midst of that game, with what many might call a below average, stat line. That was still there, that you saw, what was inside of Tom Brady and what really made him special.
Like you said, you've been preaching it. Always take the layups. Just take the layups, and that'll get you far. NFL Network analyst Kurt Warner. You can see Kurt every Sunday on NFL Network's NFL Game Day morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. We appreciate you coming on, man. Thank you so much. We hope you come back and party with us and talk ball with us again soon, man.
All right. I'm always down. So appreciate you having me on, and enjoy the rest of the season.